Okay, let's be real. You scroll through social media and see hundreds, maybe even thousands of friends. But how many of those people do you actually know? Like, really know? Well, it turns out there might be a hardwired limit, a cap on how many meaningful relationships our brains can jungle.
So, what is that number? And I'm not talking about followers or random acquaintances. I mean the number of real, stable relationships you can genuinely keep up with. Is there a ceiling to our social lives? Well, according to one really famous theory, the answer is a big yes, and the number is surprisingly specific.
It's around 150. Yeah, that's it. That's the supposed magic number. It sounds kind of random, right? Maybe even a little small, especially in our super-connected world. This idea is called Dunbar's number, and it's one of the most talked about concepts in social science. So let's dig in. Where did it come from, and what does it really mean for us?
All right, let's break this down. First up, this idea of a 150 friend limit. This isn't just a number someone pulled out of a hat. The theory goes that it's a cognitive ceiling, a limit that's basically built right into the hardware of our brains.
So here's the official scoop. Back in the 90s, a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar came up with this. He suggested that our brains just don't have the processing power to maintain more than a certain number of stable social relationships. And when he says maintain, he doesn't just mean you know their name, he means you know who they are, you know their story, and you kind of know how they fit in with everyone else you know. It's a complex web of information. To make this whole thing less academic and more, well, real, Dunbar created this awesome little thought experiment. He called it the bar test. Picture this. You walk into a bar and see someone you know. Would you feel comfortable just walking up and joining them for a drink, completely uninvited without it being super awkward? The list of people you'd say yes to, Dunbar theorized, that list probably tops out at around 150. It's such a simple and brilliant way to think about it, right?
So, you're probably wondering, how on earth did he land on 150 of all numbers? Well, the answer is pretty wild. It's a story that involves brains, monkeys, and, get this, the power of gossip. His research process was actually pretty cool, and in a way, pretty straightforward. Step 1, he looked at all sorts of primate groups. Step 2, he noticed a really clear connection between the size of their neocortex, that's the wrinkly thinking part of the brain, and the size of their social groups. The bigger the neocortex, the bigger the tribe. So for step 3, he basically just did the math. He took that ratio and applied it to the size of a human neocortex. And what number did the calculation spit out? 148. He just rounded that up to a nice, clean 150. And that right there was the key finding. It seemed like a pretty solid rule in the primate world. Bigger neocortex, bigger social circle. The logic from there was simple. If it works for them, why wouldn't it work for us? I mean, when you get right down to it, we're primates too, just with these ridiculously oversized brains.
But wait, there's another really cool piece to this puzzle. See, primates bond by grooming each other, picking bugs out of their fur and all that. It works great for building trust, but it's slow. It's a one-on-one activity. Dunbar calculated that for us to maintain a group of 150 people using physical grooming, we'd have to spend something like 40% of our day doing it. No way. So, we evolved a much more efficient tool, language. He called it vocal grooming. All our chatting, gossiping, and storytelling, it lets us groom and bond with several people at once, which is how we can possibly manage such large social groups. Okay, so a theory based on monkey brains is one thing. That's fair. But does this number actually, pop up in the real world? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. People who support the theory started seeing the number 150 everywhere they looked, all throughout human history. And these examples are pretty convincing. Think about it. The size of ancient Neolithic farming villages? Turns out they hovered right around 150 people. Certain religious communities, like the Hutterites, they traditionally split their communities when they hit, you guessed it, 150. Even military history shows this. The basic unit of a Roman army was about this size, and so are many modern military companies. It's even used in business. The company that makes Gore-Tex, W.L. Gore, famously won't let any of its office buildings grow beyond 150 people. They say it's to keep everyone knowing each other on a personal level. It's kind of uncanny.
So the case seems pretty solid, right? You've got this cool origin story with the monkeys, and then all this real-world evidence that seems to back it up. But you know how science works. No good idea gets a free pass, and Dunbar's number has definitely faced some serious debate and criticism.
One of the first big jabs came from a couple of researchers, Bernard and Kilworth. They did their own studies, going out and actually asking people to list everyone they knew. And their number? It wasn't 150. It was closer to 290. That's almost double what Dunbar was suggesting.
And the pushback didn't stop there. Other scientists started poking holes in the original theory. Some argued that maybe a primate's diet is a better predictor of its group size than its brain size. Others pointed out, quite fairly, that human brains aren't just scaled-up monkey brains. We have culture, technology, all sorts of things that change the game. On top of all that, critics went back to Dunbar's original math and pointed out that his own confidence interval was huge. The data suggested the number could be as low as 100 or as high as 230. That's a pretty big margin of error.
So where does all this leave us? Is Dunbar's number just wrong? Well, maybe we're thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe it's not supposed to be some unbreakable law of nature, but more like a useful rule of thumb.
And even Dunbar himself would say it's way more nuanced than just one number. He talks about our social world being made of layers, kind of like an onion. At the very center, you have your inner core, maybe 5 people. These are your ride or dies, and you spend about 40% of your total social time with them. The next layer out has about 15 close friends. Add them in, and you're spending 60% of your social time. That big 150 number? That's just the outermost layer of people you actually have a meaningful connection with.
So why is this idea so popular? Why does it stick with us, even with all the scientific debate? I think ultimately it's because it just feels right, doesn't it? It gives us this simple, compelling model for thinking about the structure of our social world. It might not be an exact law, but it's an incredibly useful way to wrap our heads around how we connect with people.
And really, that brings this whole conversation back to you. Maybe the most important takeaway here isn't whether the number is exactly 150. Maybe the real power of this idea is that it makes us pause and think about our own lives. Who are the people in our circles? What do those layers of friendship look like for us? It reminds us that connection takes time and energy. So let me leave you with this. What's your number?